Please be seated. Whew. As the old boy said, if that don't light your fire, your wood is wet. It's Reformation Sunday. Wow. Thank you, Deb. That was terrific. We have such a wonderful God. And today is all about Jesus, the one who sacrificed his life for us. You know, the difference between the Christian faith and all other religions in the world is that other religions require me to behave and then God to respond. I behave and God responds in kind. And so we paint a picture of God in that scenario as one who is neutral at best, if not with his arms crossed, just waiting to find an excuse to punish me. And it's not just a world religion. And historically, this is the struggle as a child growing up that Martin Luther struggled with. And it's not just a story in history, because it happens among us today, this week in Fort Myers. We still struggle with that in our conversations with each other, in our relationships. I must have done something wrong, or I need to do something better, and then God will bless me. We may not be so clear about stating it that way, but that was the struggle, the age-old struggle that Martin Luther wrestled with. And you see, it wasn't actually October 25th, but we celebrate as Lutherans. We can't miss it. So the last Sunday of October is always, as long as I'm around, Reformation Sunday, and that's certainly very common among Lutherans today, and has been. But it was October 31st, the eve of All Saints' Day, when Martin Luther posted the 95 Theses. Now, I'm not going to read all 95, but I couldn't resist bringing, in English, not auf Deutsch, but this is volume 31 from the 54 volumes of Luther's works, the American edition. And the most important thesis, I believe, is thesis 62. Sorry. The true treasure of the church is the most holy gospel of the glory and grace of God. That word grace is there, and that's why I wanted to read that. Now, I could share a little bit more that would kind of give you a hint as to why Luther wrote these things. Here's thesis 86. Why does not the Pope, whose wealth is today greater than the wealth of the richest Crassus, build this one basilica of St. Peter with his own money, rather than the money of poor believers? Does that give you a little hint of what was going on? I had a good conversation with a friend this week about the opportunity of a lifetime that Deb and I had to actually stand above the grave of St. Peter, where he's buried beneath the grand altar of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. I was just there in May. And 40 feet down, the tomb of a man that's probably maybe Peter. That's the best historians can come up with. Probably maybe it's Peter. And to be there in the Vatican Library and to see what an ancient artist painted, who obviously wasn't there when Peter was crucified, but Peter hanging on a cross upside down, and in the background you see the obelisk that stood in the center of Nero's circus, which is why they built St. Peter's Basilica where they did. Okay, and so in 1505, I'm not going to give you a whole history lesson, but at 1505, Pope Julian was spending money he didn't have. At one end, he had Michelangelo painting the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. At the other end, he had Raphael painting the Raphael rooms. And it's just a sight to behold. But then he thought, we need to have a capital campaign. And so he had an idea. He thought, we can sell forgiveness of sins. And it was in about the year 1510, in the middle of this construction, soon after the completion of the Sistine Chapel, that a young Augustinian monk traveled with his bishop or with his seminary president, the abbot from the monastery, to Rome. Martin Luther saw this. He saw the vastness of all this. And he also saw some things that cut him to the core. He saw behavior by priests and nuns that he could not possibly imagine could ever happen. Behavior that even non-believers don't practice. And it was 1517, several years later, that this whole thing came out, this sale of indulgences. And so, again, just to read you a couple more here. Those who believe, Thesis 32, those who believe that they can be certain of their salvation because they have indulgence letters will be eternally damned together with their teachers. Any truly repentant Christian has a right to full remission of penalty and guilt, Thesis 36, even without indulgence letters. That's enough. If you want to borrow this, if I can keep it till 11 o'clock service, be happy to share that with you. That's what kind of got the ball rolling. There's more to that story, but it doesn't matter. What Luther is saying is it's all about Jesus. We just sang, with might of ours cannot be done, by the way, the hymn written by Martin Luther. But for us fights the valiant one. Jesus Christ it is. And he is the one who claims victory over sin and death and hell. It's not my behavior and God's response. It is God's act. God so loved the world that he sent his only Son. And the Apostle Paul writes elsewhere, he died for all, so that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who loved them and gave himself for them. God's behavior, our response. That's the Christian faith. That's what we celebrate. It's not about us. It's about Jesus.